of Senior Manager of Risk and Advisory of Life Science and Healthcare at Deloitte. Today we are having a digital medicine webinar. The webinar will cover opportunities and challenges of digital therapeutics with practical examples from Europe and the US. So we are having 15 to 20 minutes of presentation by Pavel, and then we can have 15-20 minutes for your questions. So Pavel, please, we are really looking forward to hear something interesting from you.
Okay, so nice to meet you, everybody. As Nastya said, my name is Pavel Nevitsky, and just to introduce myself, I have for the last 5.5 or 6 years been leading a digital therapeutics company, partially in Prague and partially in Germany, mostly in Munich and Berlin, with the focus on bipolar affective disorder. So I have seen all the efforts of the German regulators to introduce DTX into the health system. And now my main topic in Deloitte is basically building the Center of Excellence for digital medicine and digital therapeutics in particular. We in Deloitte work very closely with the other European countries. So I'll be giving the examples from the projects that I have already participated on, or I have had the opportunity to see, and hopefully it will give you some initial introduction to the DTX. I have seen that there are many people from the Netherlands, so maybe interesting for you. One of the last project that I've just closed was working for a digital health company based in Amsterdam that was testing their product and wanted to do a assessment of their product on the German market. So I have been recently exposed a lot to the Dutch side of digital health as well. So digital therapeutics, what is it? According to the Digital Therapeutics Alliance, which is a global alliance of all the companies that somehow want to claim they are DTX, the definition says it's evidence-based therapeutics intervention. So basically, if we do something with the patients and it has positive clinical outcome, then it can be considered DTX. It has to be provided by the high quality software. So it's the second important part. And the third, the clinical outcome, the expected clinical outcome is prevention of the disease, management of the disease, or treatment of the disease. So one of these three examples. Typically, in the area of product, these solutions are focusing on the mental health market, so a mental health therapeutic area, which might be the one that I have been very involved with. It's the severe mental illnesses like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, but also less severe disorders like anxiety or depression. But there are also others, like companies that are treating the substance abuse, that are helping to manage also the oncology treatment, that are helping to work with the people suffering from diabetes and monitoring their clinical state. When looking at the challenges of DTXs, it typically gets to three areas: product, market, and regulation. So in product, it's the crucial thing to define what we can, or what the company or what the DTX can actually achieve, and what could be the ultimate positive care effect that would be provided by the software solution. And it can be anything from supporting the patient after the disbursement, or up to the continuous monitoring of the life threatening conditions for people that are suffering from chronic disease. And when we get to the questions, I can, I don't know, maybe describe in more detail what the DTX companies on the market currently are. The second area is market, and it's about how to get the money out of the solution. And you know, in the general life science industry, the typical setup was that when you find a new substance that actually works in the clinical setting, then getting to the market is easy, because everybody wants to try something that is new. There is a clear market access strategy how to get to the market. It's not the case with DTX. So in DTX, it's a complex issue, and it works very differently on different markets. And regulations, there are some regulations that are pan-European, but of course it does not apply to the US. There might be some complications with sharing or using the patient data when it's a US company in Europe or European company in the US. It's again very local specific. In product, I have 3 more slides to basically initiate the potential questions or topics. In the product, we can do, or the DTX solution can do diagnostics somehow, and you need to answer the questions like, how does it fit actually to the existing care model? Is there somebody that would be interested in the diagnostic? Typically, it's not the primary diagnostics, so we don't do, or the DTX doesn't do very often the diagnostics of this person was considered healthy, then we have applied the DTX, and now we believe that he suffers from some disease. But the diagnostics in this sense is typically identification of the situation when the chronically diagnosed patient is deteriorating somehow. So diagnosing or identification of the relapses. The remote patient monitoring, well, is it something that it is something that should be considered? Many DTX companies are avoiding RPM at the moment for the reason of the difficult route to the reimbursement, even in Europe. In US, it's a different story. In US, the RPM might be a fallback scenario. So if FDA does not agree or is not happy with the clinical description or clinical outcomes of the DTX, they might be happy with RPM. So monitoring the patient information and providing this to the doctors. And intervention, that's the ultimate goal, like what the DTX should provide, how this could be validated, is the intervention supported and trusted by the key opinion leaders? Is it something that the clinicians can understand? There are all these discussions about AI. You have already heard some presentations or webinars on AI in medicine. AI in medicine has this big issue of understandability, and recently, which is being pushed by the doctors, but also the regulators. And recently, I have heard the term explainable AI, which is something that might be then used in the medicine in the area of intervention. Market, Well, how do we make money with ETX? Of course, the market access thing, we need to understand whether it's realistic to get reimbursement, or we can get the money from partnering with life science companies or with healthcare providers, which is or health insurance companies as well, which is the typical and most often the model in Europe at the moment, because the reimbursement pathway is doable in Germany because there is a clear DTX reimbursement model called DIGA, but in most other countries, when I was talking about Netherlands, it's the way of partnering with somebody, very often with a health insurance company that is supporting development and provides the solution to the clients of the health insurance company. Distribution models, it's a big topic at the moment because, as I said, with the typical life science, it's easier because the pharma companies are doing it for, I don't know, 200 years. They know how to get the pills to the market. They know how to distribute it. It's only about optimization. But when it comes to the digital solution, it's not that easy that the company would only upload the solution to the App Store. Because it has to be supported by the doctors and it has to be prescribed by the doctors. So there is this complication of like how the distribution models can work. Is it in parallel with working with pharma companies that are trying to get into it? Is it working with some other partners on the market? Is it working with the telemed companies and so on? And pricing, well, how much should it cost? In DIGA, in Germany, there's this regulations that says that preliminary listing of DTX can mean that the regulator says for the initial 12 months, the company can ask for whatever price they want. So, which of course does not make the health insurance companies happy because it's typically the pricing currently on the market is around 500 euros per therapy. The therapy is 6 weeks, so it's quite expensive. Recently, the KBV, the Association of Health Insurance Companies in Germany, agreed that they would want to have the average pricing for the therapy to be at about 200 euros. So how much can we as a company ask for the price? And the third, regulations, clinical, what data can the solution be based on? Which was one of the topics with the Dutch company, because it was really interesting setup, because they have been working with they're working with a French partner that has built the DTX on the French data. It was to a certain extent accepted by the health insurance company in Netherlands, but BfArM, as the German regulator, said, well, the French system is so different, we want you to validate this on the German data, otherwise we are not ready to reimburse. So the clinical data, it's important. Technical, as I said, it's not only about clinical, but also about the software solution. So the company needs to be ready to go through the penetration testing. Typically, they are asked for implementing the single sign-on. They are asked to get integrated into the hospital information systems, and so it might make it quite complex. And personal data, GDPR, of course. The last thing is something that the EU companies need to solve very often, and it's basically when the European company is using a data storage on the Amazon, Microsoft, or Google, so the US ultimately owned companies, there must be additional security steps that will not allow the access from the US, because otherwise it will not comply with the GDPR. There is no, or the contract between the EU and the US is not sufficient for clearing this sort of data. So a lot of challenges. That's me. I'll be very happy to answer any of your detailed questions. And now the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, Pavel, let me first thank you. Apologies for the fact that my video is not working. I'm not sure what's going on. My name is Remco. I'm one of the board members from IntMeDA. So before we open it up for questions, I just wanted to thank you for the interesting talk you had for us today. Digital health is certainly a very interesting topic, and I recently read an article about how the medical world, the medical device world, will look like in 15 years. And there's a significant number of people that believe that the companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and so on will be the main suppliers in medical, rather than the Medtronics, the Johnson & Johnsons as we have today. And digital health is certainly where the future is. So thank you very much for the interesting talk, and with this I'd like to open it for the floor for questions to you.
Pavle, jenom tě poprosím, mohl bys zhodit to sdílení?
Jo, pardon.
Thank you very much, Pavel, for this webinar. Thank you, Remco, for your words. So now we are ready to come to questions. Dear members, maybe you have some questions to ask, please. This is a time for it.
Pavel, may I ask the first question? We are based in Malta. We have started to embark in this new digital medical technology field. And this was started way back about 4 years ago with the initial concept. Today, we are monitoring remotely approximately 150 type 1 diabetic patients. This we're doing in conjunction with the local health authorities, and we are currently trying out the service. My question to you is whether you have experience in this sector, specifically in monitoring young adults with type 1 diabetes, what type of hardware you're actually using, and how you did the integration, please. And to close it up, how do you measure the improvement of the outcomes?
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting topic, and I can spend a lot on this because my youngest son is suffering from type 1 diabetes. So we have been I was following it and I'm still following the development of the closed loop solutions very closely. If we would be talking about the reimbursement schemes, it's very different in different European markets. So the most often scheme that I have seen is basically that you buy the hardware from one of the providers like Medtronic or whatever, and then you need to on a typically monthly or weekly basis buy the sensors, and it covers it basically covers the monitoring costs, because the health insurance companies are willing and they know how to reimburse for the physical solution, but they are very often struggling with the topic of reimbursing the digital solution only. So I don't know what exactly you are providing. The DTX solution in diabetes type 1, but also type 2 that I was referring to are typically the companies that are somehow monitoring the food and exercise, and they validated the positive care effects on the fact that I don't know that the blood sugar levels has decreased in 6 weeks or 8 weeks when they have been testing it from the initial involvement of the patient. So that's the software.
One of our markers, if I may interrupt for a second, is estimated HbA1c throughout a number of months. What I'd really love to understand a bit more is we practically work with a company called Dexcom.
Dexcom, Dexcom is the one that my son is using, so I know Dexcom well.
It's unfortunately the only one approved for juvenile use on the island, because other companies were not interested that much, probably in such a small market. My wish is to try to understand whether there are other organizations who actually use Dexcom, and to understand how they actually manage to integrate the feeding of information from the servers into a third-party platform. I know this is possible in the States. As far as I know, there's no API integration anywhere in the EU. Can you confirm that for me?
Well, I don't know. I can reach out to. I'm not the diabetology expert, but I can potentially try to reach out some of the DTX companies that I know, because it of course makes a lot of sense to integrate this solution with the hardware. So
right.
I can try to do it, and we'll let you know, Ben.
Okay.
Pavle, Alžběta from Aspironic speaking. I have a question. You mentioned the psycho digital applications or tools, and I would be interested as a certified psychotherapist, how you measure the progress in the psycho topics.
It's usually depending on the diagnosis, but it's usually measured in or through the questionnaires. So you basically involve the patient into the program, you let him or her fill in the questionnaire, and after the therapy, which might be 6 weeks, you again ask him to fill in the questionnaire, and when there is a statistical significant result on a defined population, then you can say that that it's clinically proven the clinical effect. So it's the same as with any medication.
Okay, thank you.
Pavle, maybe I would follow up with a question, little bit maybe similar to Benny's. You were talking about the remote patient monitoring and the US market being more ready for the co-payments and this kind of involvement. We are actually now partnering up with a beautiful company providing Holter monitoring with really digital with no cables. And I wanted to ask you, you were talking about the reimbursement systems in Europe not being really ready for this yet. Could you see any swift or change maybe in that in some markets in Europe, or is it still really strict?
Well, in Europe, you can get the reimbursement, but based on something the Germans call selective Verträge, which is like a selective contract, so only with one health insurance companies. And in this model, there are reimbursed remote patient monitoring solutions. It works on other European markets. What I was referring to was more the general model, like the DTX reimbursement in Germany. On the other hand, in US, when you have the RPM solutions, then there is a code, or there are, I think, 2 or 3 codes under Medicare and Medicaid that could be used, and the provider will be reimbursed for the monitoring of certain biological parameters.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Hello, Pavel. This is Christoph. I'm curious about the differences between countries and their progressiveness, like in the terms of the data-driven solutions. You mentioned the example with France and Germany. Do you see any possible solution that it will be united? That's the first question under European legislation. And then what are the most lenient countries in this, like most progressive countries in adopting the, for example, AI or virtual reality solutions?
Well, there is a movement on the EU level to create a standardized digital environment, I would say, in healthcare. So the intention is to have at least certain parameters the same or comparable. So it will take some time, but I believe this is the way that the market is moving, because the data are so easy to move. So and the more data you have, the stronger are the clinical results, and so on. So I think this is what the European Commission understands, and that's why it's moving this way. And in terms of using the data-driven solutions, it's I think it's difficult to say what countries, like to say only a few, are on top, because in terms of reimbursement, definitely the pioneer would be Germany. To a certain extent, Belgium, and to a lesser extent, the UK. On the other hand, the Nordic solutions, Nordic health systems are different. So it's being paid by the regions, and not there are no health insurance companies involved, and it helps in other aspects, which is becoming now clear, that if you are managing through the digital therapeutics some chronic conditions, it saves the money to the overall system, but maybe not necessarily to the health system, but to the social system. And while in Sweden or Denmark, these two are somehow interconnected, because the regions are responsible for health and social payments. in typical European healthcare setup, it's separated. So the health insurance companies are saying, well, it's not fair for us to carry all the costs if we are decreasing the social payments. So, so in this respect, it's easier to get to some insurance contracts on the chronic conditions in the Nordic countries than in other European countries. So that would be my answer.
Thank you.
And I have another question. Do you see in these northern countries like Sweden or any countries any tendency to cooperate more with the home care agencies with the aim to transfer the care from the hospitals to the home care?
Yeah, I think it's exactly related to the thing that I was mentioning. So if the social and health money are coming from one pocket, then it makes sense to, I don't know, support the home care, and it makes sense financially as well. Yeah. In the systems where social and health is separated, then it's more difficult. I think that the German legislator understands it, and they are now looking into the way of how to expand the DIGA, which is for the health solutions, to the chronic rehabilitation and social area as well. But it's the idea at the beginning, at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Some other questions from anyone?
I also have one more question, Pavel. What is the typical solution or business model you are asked to do in your company? are those like the most innovative trends, like AI solution or build us telehealth medicine solution, or are those still like back in the day more conservative solutions?
As a consultant?
Yeah.
Well, the typical engagement, if we'll be working with somebody that is providing the solution, would be how can we make money out of it? Because with digital solutions, they say that the market validation is the new clinical validation. So if you are ready to, or if you are successful in selling and getting money for what you have created, then it has nowadays bigger value than the actual only clinical solution, clinical validation. And it's related to many facts. One of them would be also the intellectual property thing, like how to be sure that we have created and developed something that nobody can copy and yeah.
So is it related most to the B2C or like B2B? Like,
well, in the reimbursement, it is mostly B2B, because whenever you go B2C, it's usually the first step. But when you want to like really becoming a health solution, then you need to enter the health insurance market, and then it's B2B.
and B2B is, I guess, like getting the support and the validation from the businesses and the distributors of your solution, or do I understand it wrong?
Yes, yeah. Well, it's basically the market validation is the health insurance company willing to pay for using your solution? That's or is the partner, which might be the healthcare provider, or in certain extents pharma company, willing to pay for using your solution? So that's the validation.
And is there any new pricing model on the horizon? Like because I know from experience that we experience many like those licensing business models. So is there any other actually that can help and can be adopted?
Well, it depends on the market exit strategy. So if it's a full reimbursement, then it's up to the company to discuss with the health insurance system how much you can get as a standalone solution, basically. So there is no licensing, and you say the therapy costs that much, and it's the same as selling aspirin. But if you are partnering with somebody, then it might be, and it typically is some licensing deal. So it's, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Questions? Some other questions for someone? No?
Yes, I'd like to ask the last question, I believe. Hello, Pavel. I'm new at IntMeDA, and I'd like to ask you that, do you think that the employers might play a new major role in digital solution market?
In some solutions, yes. If it's less severe, yes. For example, in Canada, there is this model that the biggest mobile phone operator is acting as a distributor of the health solutions. So yes. However, if it's severe solutions, typically the patients don't want their employers to have the access to this sensitive data. So so the deals might be the employer pays and the data stays somewhere, but it's this feeling of the patients. Is there a way that my employer would find out that, for example, I'm depressive? And if they find out, they might use it potentially against me. You know, even if it's not the case, that might be the interpretation of the patients. So it's if it's a back pain, for example, it's not that big deal. But if it's I don't know, bipolar disorder, then it might be a big deal.
Understandable. Okay, thank you.
So maybe I can make a small summary of our webinar. And of course, Pavel, I would like to receive your help if I'm wrong. So as I understood the digital medicine, we expect that some diseases will be prevented, managed or cured with digital therapies, right? And then it's very important because medicines become more to patients, and patients can be like they can be cured by that their all of their health situation will be managed by the doctors through the digital therapeutics. And as for pharma companies, they should articulate a clear vision of where should they go. Should they implement it by their own or with the help of the digital companies, right? And then expand the traditional business models because it's a little bit different to them. Is that correct?
Yes.
So maybe you can like summarize a little bit for us as well with your professional.
Well, I was trying to just show you the challenges and how to tackle these. So the summary would be very simple. There are many challenges in these three areas: product, market, and also the regulations that needs to be tackled somehow. And this adjustment and solution is still like local based, because the solution in France would be different than the solution in Germany, and the solution in Germany would be different to the one in Belgium, for example, or in Netherlands. So, and when building the DTX solutions, one that is doing this needs to consider all these aspects.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for webinar. Thank you for answering our questions. Dear members, thank you for your time, for your attention. Webinar is recording and it will be on our website, so you can go on Member Zone and rewatch it once again. Thank you for your time. Have a great day. And let me mention that about members call. I think that we will do it in the end of August because now it's very hot season of holidays and etc. So I will send you an agenda soon, and thank you very much for your attention and have a nice day.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pavel. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.